Because it knew that one day the prophecy may come true, that this seed would crush his head. He followed it. He tried to destroy it through the flood. He tried to destroy it with Abraham. He tried to destroy it with Jacob. There would end up being a famine in the land, but each time God would intervene to protect the seed. And it continued to go through. We can look all the way through time from when God had a child that would be born and hidden in a river. And this child would set his slaves free, his people. And yet, even a Pharaoh tried to destroy the seed, to discourage it. You see it following through time as the Exodus, and from the Exodus even to the base of a mountain. From there, entering into the promised land, you continue to see it being passed on. And eventually you see it where it comes to a little town called Bethlehem. And it's amazing that in this little town, you see a star that comes and identifies who the seed is. It would be born to a woman named Mary. A miracle in her birth, in the birth of this child. And yet there would be so much controversy around it. If you look at the child, do you remember where he was placed? In a manger? Back then, a manger was not these cute little wooden shacks. It was a hole in the side of a mountain that had a large opening. And the only thing that was allowed in the manger was those animals that would be sacrificed. You would not find a horse or a donkey or a mule. You would find an ox. You would find a lamb. You'd find pigeons. And you would find only those items that would be sacrificed for the remission of men's sins. But that day you would find something else. In a stone crib, you would find a child that would be the ultimate sacrifice. See, from a virgin womb to a virgin tomb, from blood this child is born. For blood is his blood would be the remission of sins. You would see as this child started to grow up, he was not like any other child. He was different. You see, he was all God and all man, trying to save a world that really did not want to be saved. You would see demonic forces doing everything that they can to be able to destroy this one seed. They would run into Egypt and come back again. And during the time that this is happening, the focus was all on Jesus. If people during that time had their eyes open, you see, for us, our eyes became closed when sin came in. When that angel was placed before the tree of life, something dimmed out the vision of Adam and Eve, where they no longer were able to see the spiritual beings. But if our eyes were open and could see everything, you would see that this sanctuary would be lined with angels. Lined with those individuals that were ministering to God himself before the throne. Each one lining the walls. We may not see them, but they're here. And by their authority, that comes only from the throne of God. But I know that God was able to see him. And I know that there was a child as he grew up was able to see him. And I know that they saw him and knew who he was. You see, to those ministers, those angels, this was not simply a seed. This was their commander-in-chief. This is the one that they worship. This is the one who, for them, they would bow their heads to. Angels that were powerful enough to destroy a nation. And it only would take one angel to do so. Would bow his knee to the king of the entire universe. And they watched as the Creator, the Word that became flesh, enter into this world. And yet mankind did not know him. They wouldn't recognize him as God. They wouldn't bow their knee to them. Instead, they were puffed up in their own pride and their own arrogance. They didn't know who he was. that he was God. The same Jesus, Yeshua, would walk through this world. And everywhere he would go, he would transform lives. Because that's what he does. It's not what he did, not what he's going to do, but what he does every moment, even today. Can you imagine him walking into a town? I mean, he walks in and there's blind people there, and he's walking in and there's people that are lame, people that are dumb that cannot speak, people that cannot hear, all those means of communication, the lepers that were numb. Satan would use every means possible to destroy the means of communication that God had granted as a privilege and a gift to every human being. He would destroy it so that they would not have any communication with their Creator. And then came Jesus. This is our Lord. He'd walk in. He would touch people. He would touch the blind, and they would see. He would walk up to someone that's been lame since birth, and he would touch them, and the molecules, like at creation, would come back together, and he would be able to walk. Touch the person that was dumb, and they'd be able to talk. He would go through, and there was a funeral chain coming in, and a mother holding her child that were coming through, and he would go through, and he would ruin funerals. He would touch the boy, and he would come up to life. And then, just as he walked through the town, he would walk out. And people walking in would try to figure out what happened here. Can you imagine what people would say? I don't know. All I know is that you could try to catch and ask the person that was lame, if you could catch him, or you could talk to the person that was dumb if you could get him to be quiet. You could talk to even that dead boy over there if you could try to get him away from his mother's grips. Or you could talk to this blind man over here. My understanding is he saw everything. Every time Jesus came to town, he transformed lives. The same Jesus that stood before creation, and after everything was created, he looked at it and he said it was good, and it was very good. It's finished. It's complete. It's done. It was the same Jesus during that time that had the plan of salvation all met just for you and just for me. But he would not be beyond the enemy. You see, there was one that did not like him. He knows who he was. He would look straight into him because he knew that it was this Jesus that kicked him out of heaven. It was this Jesus who said that his law was pure and true. There was nothing unholy about it that he claimed he couldn't even keep. It was this Jesus that he despised, that had arrogance over. And it was this Jesus that it was prophesied would crush his head. And it was this demonic, powerful being that decided that it wasn't going to be. That he was going to take this Jesus out. He was going to destroy him. He was going to crush him. He will not give him opportunity to save mankind. Every step of the way, he would set a trap. And every trap he would set, Jesus would expose. They tried it with a woman that was caught adultery. Exposed. Each time they would set it, he would expose it. He tried to even get people to try to kill him, and Jesus would walk through them, and they couldn't even touch him. Jesus had the authority that in that day, he would take just a few fish and a few pieces of bread, and he would present it up to God and bless it. And as he would bless it, he would put it down, and the molecules, like he did at creation, would multiply itself and feed thousands. He was a Jesus that when Satan brought a storm, a tempest to come down and destroy not only him, but his disciples as well, He was a Jesus that would stand up and say, peace be ye still. He was a Jesus that could speak to the harshest storm, and he would command it to stand down, and its creation would obey. But he could not get his own people to obey him. He couldn't do it. He wasn't going to make them a robot. It was free will. They were going to love him because they wanted to. And if his love doesn't make them want to turn their lives around, there's nothing else that will. And so this morning I want to ask you one question.